Hi, I'm State Senator Joe Markley from Southington, up here at the Capitol to bring you a little update. I'm going to talk about education today, and one of the reasons is because I spent some time last week at Darrenowski Elementary School, where I went to high school once upon a time. And I'll circle on back to that, but there's a couple of issues that we're dealing with right now that are going to affect those young children whose classroom I've had the pleasure of visiting. One of them that I'm sure you're hearing about is the Common Core. I've been hearing about it for quite a while. I was contacted by people who were concerned about it last year, and I've met with people on and off and looked into it. And I have to say that for me it's a very simple issue to take a position on. I believe that education is something that should be controlled locally. I think that's how it's been done, and I don't think that we have anything to contribute from Hartford or from Washington to the educational decisions that are made. We can contribute some support, we might contribute some options, but we shouldn't be in control. Control should rest with the local boards of education, the administrators, and the voters in each town. I represent 5 communities: Southington, Prospect, Wolcott, Cheshire, and Waterbury. What works in Prospect, I think, is unlikely to work in Waterbury. Every community is very different, and we ought to let them be different. What's happened is Common Core was one of the things that was pushed through first by the State Board of Education in 2010, without any public hearings or public input, with hardly anyone knowing. And then in a bill that the governor put together in 2012, we went on to implement that and many other ideas that I think are actually bad for our education program. That bill was one of those pieces of vampire legislation I've mentioned that was presented to us after midnight and passed before dawn without any chance for real public input into it or any chance for legislators to understand what they were voting on. I'm proud to say I voted against that. We now are going to have a hearing because of the aggressive policies of the House Republican caucus on Common Core. I think that's a good first step. I would like to see us go further than that, and I hope that we will consider putting an amendment on the floor to enable parents to opt their children out of the testing that's being pushed on them right now. So I'll be working on that issue through the rest of the session. I've also been very concerned about the higher education system in Connecticut. The cost of it has risen steadily at a time when incomes have been flat or even dropping. And I've particularly focused on the Board of Regents that oversees our regional colleges and our community colleges. I was very alarmed to see a new proposal by the governor to take $60 million out of the normal budget process, out of legislative control, to give directly to the Board of Regents, not for existing programs which badly need funding, but for new initiatives. I happen to know that the Board of Regents in this current year is almost $5 million in deficit. Community colleges that have cut and cut are being asked to cut again. I think the first thing we have to do is fund what we're doing and not start new initiatives, especially initiatives that have no guarantee of continued funding beyond the first year or two. And let me just return for a second to the first graders that I visited at Darrenowski. As frustrated as I get in Hartford, I have to say that when I go to the classrooms back in my district, I am always encouraged. I'm encouraged by the skill and the dedication and the affection that school teachers have for their children, by the clear-sightedness of the administrators that I've got to know, and of course by the charm and by the talent and by the potential that I see in those young children. So let's leave it on that happy note. This is Joe Markley, and I will be back to you with another legislative update in a week or two.